Hello and welcome back. We got some exciting news today. We are doing a rundown of Dev Diary 81, and in it, we have some new laws. Now, some of these were spoiled in Dev Diary number 80, or they weren't quite spoiled, but they were teased, rather, and so we're going to take a look at these. These are exciting. They should shake up play a little bit. I have concerns that there will still be kind of a meta tactic or meta assembly of laws, but as you can see, there is new laws. And so, these laws exist to grant you an experience of more modern forms of states to represent changing ideologies of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. So it's going to be mainly for later game laws and to represent some of the more continuous and important issues of the period: land reformation, anti-clericalism, modernized systems of governments. Okay, so the first and biggest one, in my estimation, is the land reform. One of the most important political issues when modernizing nations was a matter of land reform, blah blah blah, etc. Previously, is mainly just like you go from serfdom to not serfdom, and it's just this is the simplest thing. And now if we take a look, now there's a whole bunch more involved here. There's serfdom, tenant farmers, commercialized agriculture, homesteading, and collectivized agriculture. And so this is all very exciting. We don't get a full rundown of each of these and the PMs that they will give, but we get a description of it. Under the new law reform category, production methods pertaining to the rural economy have been decoupled from the economic system law instead of being folded into this category. The ownership production methods available for farms and plantations will be determined through the player's land reform laws. And this is big for balance changes, because previously agrarianism's been particularly bad because the landowners are not a very good ownership type, because they only contribute 10% of their income to the investment pool, whereas capitalists contribute 20%. And so you have, the general strategy has been, you just completely don't go agrarian at all. Now, what this might allow for, and I'm not saying it will allow for it because you have to look at the numbers, it might allow for agrarianism to actually be decent. Previously, the distinction between serfdom and non-serfdom was extremely non-granular. You're telling me there's two, it's binary. That's if you could have a minimal number of grains, two would be the absolute minimum. Non-granular is one word for it. Once serfdom was abolished, you could hear the car alarm outside, and okay. The player could safely ignore the issue of land reform for the entirety of the game, only touching on this law category again if they wish to implement workers' protections, which you kind of want to do late game, sometimes, meh. If you have a lot of pop, it's good. Sure. With the new land reform category, the issue of who owns the land separated from the rights of the workers, allowing for increased choice in both categories, fantastic, and options for interesting political setups, such as a highly laissez-faire republic with modernized commercialized agriculture. I always thought it was a little bit strange how, we would have these, landowners, and then the landowners are managing tractors and stuff, and they're these, bougie, let's say, nobility types, and they got the tractors running in and the modernized farmers and all this type of stuff. And so if we just take a quick look, we're going to have serfdom, tenant farmers, commercialized agriculture, homesteading, collectivized agriculture. Big excite, big nice. The new land reform laws represent a variety of land ownership schema. So this is all about ownership. And so instead of being 100%, aristocrat until you get publicly traded, now it's going to be, all this is going to be separated. And the publicly traded technology will probably give something different, all of which play an important role in the political strength of the interest groups of your nation. While serfdom and tenant farmers will greatly benefit the traditional landowners' elites, the new homesteading law now provides a base benefit to the political strength of rural folk. This is the new homesteading to rural folk, and unlocks homesteading production methods, which cuts the proportion of the aristocrats in farms. And this is the point, while increasing the amount of farmer jobs. Now, this is, you can see a tooltip of here, and this is kind of important to, I'm not sure exactly how they're going to be doing it. Currently, it's cutting, you see there's 25 aristocrats versus 100, and then there's 50 extra farmers, so it actually takes fewer jobs. But the thing that, to me, is critical and is unmentioned in here is, what does the ownership of the building look like? Because if the ownership of the building is still 25 aristocrats, you haven't diluted their power, really, or you haven't solved the problem, or you haven't really changed much. Instead, it has to be partially farmers and aristocrats, or this sort of thing, because just taking away aristocrats doesn't, you need to change the ownership proportion, and it doesn't really mention whether or not it's working like that. I have to assume it's working like that in some way, and that maybe you'll have a few farmers as part of the ownership, or all of the farmers as the ownership, where they are split in a strange way, and it's not a proportional split of the dividends. We'll see exactly how they actualize it, but this is, for example, I believe they said this was on homesteading, that is going to be like this, and then I'm guessing, commercialized agriculture is going to be much more, is probably going to be the meta, is my guess, and it's going to be industrialist owned, or capitalist owned rather. Commercialized and collective agriculture, respectively, represent more modern systems of industrial agriculture, with commercialized agriculture treating land as private property and farming like a business like any other, unlocking publicly traded production method. Okay, so this is a little bit something I did not notice when skimming through. It unlocks the publicly traded production method. So it seems to be you have to be on commercialized agriculture if you want publicly traded, and so this will be meta, at least until the point where you're around maybe 1.2 bill GDP, at which point switching off of this is maybe okay, because the IPT is not worth a lot anymore, the investment pool transfer. But okay. Collectivized agriculture, on the other hand, organize the lands into plots worked by the agricultural collectives. I think that I'm excited about this a lot. I hope that they make a law system for home ownership as well at some point, but this is not mentioned in here. This is kind of a idea that I'm interested in. These collectives can either be owned by the workers themselves or directly owned by the state, unlocking both the workers' co-ops and the government-run production methods. Perfect. So what would be exciting, though, here, if I'm not mistaken, we have to have either command economy or cooperative ownership in order to get collectivized agriculture. Yeah, there's no splitting. You can't have collectivized agriculture and not have cooperative ownership and command economy, which I think would actually be a decent shout and maybe the way you would want to go if it were possible, but it's not. And then they have a bunch of flavor stuff. Of course, these are events. Super excited about this. Tired of clicking through all the same events. A little bit more localization and these sorts of things. We have a couple here and there, and this is going to be fun. Next up, we have state atheism, which is probably really bad. They haven't mentioned anywhere in here, or I didn't see anyone in here talking about migration balance. Currently, the meta is going for total separation because this allows you to get the most migrants. State atheism makes it so you discriminate against all religious pops, and that's kind of, what they're saying here. And when you discriminate against all religious pops, you're not going to be able to pull the migration. You do get 200 authority and extra conversion and minus devout strength. So if you really want to kneecap the devout, state atheism will be your boy. If we try and do a run where we are trying to, again, go for the absolute perfection of having 5 interest groups powerful simultaneously while still harvesting the bonus from a third interest group, which is just barely possible, because you will have to juggle all of the clout under 20% for those 5 interest groups, and then have 5 or 4 to 5% clout on the final one. If we try and do that again, state atheism might be really good, because that would allow you to depress, these guys into almost nothingness, and also give a lot of authority for bolsters and suppresses. And so we might actually do a state atheism run, but for the most part, I imagine enacting this is just bad, except for RP reasons, and I think the remainder of the laws they talk about are kind of just RP laws more than anything else. I think, the biggest change is going to be commercialized agriculture, I'm guessing, just unlocks publicly traded, and it's going to be publicly traded as we know it. And I'm guessing the biggest difference is going to be, this tenant farmers shtick, where you leapfrog from serfdom to tenant farmers, and possibly going homesteading to increase SOL or something like this. I think this is probably going to be the biggest change in terms of what meta looks like, and the rest is probably a little bit more on the RP scale, but a little bit more fun and differences in runs. You can see there's Atheist here. Is going to be interesting. Also, of course, we will get all the meme Atheist PAPAL state runs. But you have to be backed by nihilists, communists, and other ideologies, so it is going to be a late game law that you're going to try and pass. And here are some more events for flavor and localization, which is fantastic. I'm super glad they put them in here. Would definitely love more events, these types of things, although... yeah. Okay, so now they have 2 other, the final 2 laws added are the Technocracy Technocracy, and single-party states, both representing more modern distributions of power that were implemented or theorized during the tail end of the time period. Okay, and so let's just take a quick look at them. We have the single-party state, which is interesting to read through. It's going to give extra authority, political strength per vote, legitimacy based on votes, government ideology penalty, and attraction of the interest groups in government. This seems to me... So I think that it's representing, what is this, the CCP, this type of stuff, where you technically have a democracy, but it's highly centralized and there's only one party and this sort of thing. And so this will be interesting. You can tell that it's obviously going to be it's not like a monarchy because you are having voting, but it's highly authoritarian. We're getting a ton of legitimacy based on votes. It's all based on votes, and it's shooing everyone into the interest groups. And so perhaps this is another way to try and get, 4 parties all powerful at once with the extra attraction or something like this. This is kind of interesting. You're going to obviously, you have less government ideology penalty, but you're probably going to suffer a lot when you're going to have this big mega party. It says when enacted, interest groups will reevaluate their party support in the country, and the government composition will be updated with members of the single legal party. So I'm guessing there's only one party. And next up we have Technocracy, which is, it looks a little bit like oligarchy. You get plus 100 authority. A ton of your legitimacy is from government clout, and so you'll be wanting to keep the people really strong. You get extra government size allowance, extra legitimacy from including the head of state and government, and you get minus ideology penalty. But unlike oligarchy, which is empowering the landowners and the capitalists, this is empowering academics, engineers, and officers quite a bit as well. And so maybe there's a way to use technocracy, specifically the interest groups that are really strong are the intelligentsia, the industrialists, and the trade unionists. And this giving political strength to engineers and academics, to me, seems to indicate that you might be able to get a pretty nice, this might be pretty nice for maintaining bonuses with all 3 of those interest groups at the doubled portion, where if you're over 20% clout, or if you get over 20% clout and stay over 18%, you will double the interest group bonuses. And so this might be a really good shout for trying to do that. And, it might be hard to get a high legitimacy. This is kind of the problem with oligarchy in general, but you can take Beijing, you can do these sorts of things, you can figure it out. Okay. The new state, a single-party state law is intended as a late-game replacement for autocracy and oligarchy laws, designed to fit into the mass politics and party state. Once single-party state is enacted, either the ruler's IG political party will become the sole party of the nation, or a new political party involving the ruler's IG will form. Elections will be held every 4 years as normal, with the single legal party always getting 100% of the vote. Okay, well, so that's interesting, and that changes this a little bit. You will always be getting a ton of legitimacy, at least based on the votes, and you will lose legitimacy based on the incoherence. Okay. Under a monarchical single-party state, the head of state will be hereditary as normal, but under another system, whenever the head of state dies or otherwise changes, a new leader will be picked from someone within the party. A single-party state does permit including non-party interest groups, but they will come at a substantial hit to legitimacy, which this is notably nice because they are going to get extra attraction. So if we put the industrialists in here, they would get the 20% extra attraction, or that is what the tooltip here seems to indicate from interest groups in the government. Okay, so just maybe a way to try and massage clout into some sort of perfection thing. I'm guessing neither of these will be well. I'm guessing this will be not particularly good, but technocracy might be okay. This is kind of what I think, based on reading very little. Enacting blah 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 will enrage those not contained within the party, but will allow a unique political situation where more authoritarian laws like command economy and collective agriculture and more democratic ones, such as women's suffrage and elected bureaucrats, are available. So it'll allow kind of weird mix. Okay. And then we have more events, just kind of along this vein that they're showing. They seem to be kind of pushing the events of the localization. New laws is great, by the way, but I still think the most important thing for them to fix is political plays or diplomatic plays, and so they haven't mentioned that yet. Hopefully that's in a later dev diary. Meanwhile, it's also probably a lot harder to fix. Meanwhile, a technocracy represents rule by the trained and educated in accordance with the theories of figures such as Henry St. Simon and Howard Scott. So this is looking like a more RP thing. The tendencies the technocracy draws from are myriad, but a desire to have a state primarily ruled by technical experts. Perfect. A technocratic state will be more supported by the intelligentsia, industrialists, and provides benefits to political strength of the educated class from academics to officers. Technocracies will dispense with inefficient and unenlightened notion of democracy altogether, removing political parties, canceling elections, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is kind of an affront to, like, liberalism sentiments, as well as, like, kind of free trade type of sentiments. So I have to imagine that from the perspective of the devs, they would not want to make this good, or they would not think it would be good, but on paper, it looks decent. Looks like a decent shout. It looks like a way to still kind of keep your authority, and really, this increased political strength of engineers, in particular, stands out as, something that is maybe you can get the trade unionists strong, which I think is the main reason why you go kind of the later voting things. It's so the trade unionists can get it up above 20% clout, so you could double their bonuses because their bonuses are best. But if you could do that with technocracy might actually be best, and so that's going to be fun to experiment with. Okay, then we see that this is a technocracy, and we have intelligentsia and industrialists, and man, that's a lot of clout on the intelligentsia. Samuel Son, I assume, is a historical figure, but I'm not familiar with them. This looks almost a little like Freud, but Freud's not an industrialist. And so we will see what happens here. This will be a bit interesting. If the intelligentsia always has that amount of clout, though, it might not be the best. Because you kind of want to get a bunch of parties above 20%, but just barely above 20%. Or, well, that's actually not best when you're trying to get max legitimacy with something where you can only put 2 people in government. And so this is like one of the downsides of kind of the earlier oligarchy type stuff. Okay. Technocracy can be combined with every set of government principles in the game, although such combinations are quite unstable, meaning that both the Platonic ideal of enlightened governments and the grand dreams of whatever patriots can be realized under the law. So we can get the cybernetic state. Oh man, that's going to be fun. This is gonna, so I think a lot of this is improving like RP play, I guess. But we'll see. It will be greatly beneficial for those who wish to enshrine the rule of law of the industrialists and intelligentsia without worrying about elections. It allows for command economy. Is this sentence like almost the same as one up here? There's like, okay. Maybe I'm just rereading the same thing. But we get events. Alright, and then finally, I guess final law they're visiting is you can ban industry, which this just seems terrible. This seems like a meme. Maybe we'll try a run where we do it. It deletes all your heavy industry buildings, and it forces you to use, it disables a ton of PMs, allegedly, which, like the heavy industry, so you can't use tractors or something like this. It bans the most radical elements, blah, blah, blah. Under this law, all heavy industries in your nation, steel mills, motor industries, chem plants, and more, will be destroyed and cannot be replaced until the law is replaced. Why would you ever pass this and then replace it? I have no idea. This is a commitment. This should be not allowed. Furthermore, this law forbids all automation technologies for the industries that remain. So the clothing industries, you think you're going to go on machinized or you're going to get sewing machines? No. Mandating that the economy remain both small-scale and labor-intensive. Technology spread and research speed will be sharply reduced, allowing your nation to remain the pristine pastoral state, unblemished by things such as smog, labor-saving technology, or modern medicine. Unblemished indeed. We get some events. Darwin among the machines. Of course, passing this law will be immensely contentious, you're telling me. Any group that has an opinion on the economic system will usually have a low opinion of abolishing the means of production entirely. There are, of course, some proponents of this law that may arise, however, and under a sufficiently cruel and alienating system, some otherwise reasonable people might see an end to putting an end to the industry itself being decent. It will enormously empower rural folk, and through disabling heavy industry will also harm the influence of the industrialists and boost the landowners. By combining homesteading and industry banned... okay. One can acquire the plus 75% bonus to the clout of the rural folk. Okay. I thought they were saying you get something from having 75 clout on rural folk, like you triple your bonus instead of doubling it. Creating the rural idyllic realm with it, power lies primarily amongst the smallholding settlers. Blah blah blah. Mostly blah blah. Also, revolutions will now adopt a more desired government principles based on the more powerful IG. You won't be seeing radical communists or revolutions with monarchy at their head. And here is, of course, an example of this. So this has kind of been the dev diary, just kind of quickly going back over it. I think the most significant thing is going to be, in terms of gameplay, you're going to have now a little bit more nuance and a little more smoothness in transition from your laws, because now we are, of course, having to... This serfdom is now an economy law, and labor rights is a human rights law, and the serfdom one will include now a bunch of choices with tenant farmers, commercialized agriculture, homesteading. From the sounds of it, because they say that commercialized agriculture allows for publicly traded, my guess is that this kind of doesn't really do anything but allow publicly traded, and it's just publicly traded, and tenant farmers are somewhere in between, and then homesteading is giving more power to the rural folk or more ownership, something like this. Collectivized agriculture, I'm guessing, is just, you know, the council republic business, but it's all separated, you know, from your economic system laws, so you could mix and match a little bit if you wanted. Overall, I don't think this will be fun to play around with. We'll see how big a change it is. If you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube algorithm stuff, and have a good day.